morning. Phil Guinois and Micah Watkins here for the ENO Business Success Podcast on April 29th, 2024. And our guest today in the second half of our podcast is going to be Brian Tollefson, financial planner. So,
woohoo!
The crowd likes us already. So, Micah, why don't we talk about motivation and what is it?
Yeah, what is it? What drives people? What gets them out of bed to hit the gym early in the morning or go after that big goal that they've set for themselves? I don't know. It's a fascinating question, the motivation. Because, there's a lot of people that get motivated when they get pissed, right? And they're doing it out of anger, right? And is it effective? Oh, I'm sure they get stuff done. What's the end result, though? What did they create out of that motivation?
Well, I think it can go a couple of ways. So getting pissed is a great tool to start something, just like, kindling for a fire. It actually gets it going. However, kindling's not sustainable to do much with, right? Same thing with being, using anger or being pissed to motivate. It gets you started, but it's a slippery slope, if that's how you kind of roll all the time, is you're using anger and frustration and being pissed off to be motivated. But it is a great way to kickstart something.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a kick in the butt, right? So on the flip side, we've got, so how many people get motivated positively? And what does that look like? It's like, and we actually have to think about that one. Nothing really pops into the forefront of my mind when we hear, oh, yeah, I got motivated positively. I was just, it's like, wait a second. Well, why is that?
Well, here's what I've seen over a long time is the, what do I want to call it? The getting pumped, hype type of motivation. I actually call it cheerleader style, right? Where people that almost fake it to make it, or they go to an event and they come out and they're just walking on cloud nine, right? And they're all pumped and hyped, but it's not sustainable again, right? And I see a lot of that out there in the world, getting hyped and pumped from something, from going to an event or listening to an event.
Oh, absolutely. For perfect example, I was just, I honestly have never listened to it before. Tony Robbins, Unleash Your Power. And I just had this little urge to, let me pop this in. Let me just see what this is. I've heard about it. I've heard references to it. Let me listen to it. And how many times, you hear about, the guy, your buddy or your friend or whatever that, went to a Tony Robbins event and they came out and there's just that. They're soaring on, at maximum level. They're as high as they can possibly get. And then yet 6 months later, they're reverting right back into default, doing the same things they were doing prior to going and checking out Tony Robbins, right?
It's interesting you mentioned that because I actually did last year, if you remember, I actually did a 4-day Unleash the Power virtual, training. And most of his stuff today is virtual because they can hit such a larger audience. And I think they even have some people live there, but most of it's virtual. And it's the first one that I've gone to. I've listened to Tony Robbins before, and it was very interesting because it was really powerful. I got a lot of good stuff out of it. And, some of it's still in play. Some of it's not in play today. But as I was talking earlier, and then you talked about Tony Robbins, I thought about, all the videos that you see are the snippets of his stuff and people just jumping up and down. And I think for most people, and then I know for myself that lived as like one of those hype events, like, oh, they're all hyped up, right? But then he actually explains the physical piece of that you don't see when you see those videos and you see people, just jumping up and down and hooting and hollering and all that stuff. And you think, is that what that's all about? That's not my style. And doing it in that 4-day virtual online course, there was a group of us, we all stayed at our buddy's house. That was going on. But what he explained is the physicalness of it changes your energy immediately. And it actually changes your brain chemistry so that you can actually learn better. And so it was really interesting to actually see that kind of motivation and see it from another side and a different perspective than what I'd seen it or thought about it before.
Yeah. Well, the part that I was listening to this morning, it was just talking about that. It was just, you hear all of them like answering his questions that he asks on the stage. And when you get involved, when you chime in, then yeah, it syncs up and it becomes more real. Right. So, with the motivation, I mean, like, what really shakes people up and what's the determining factor on like when they're going to decide like, all right, enough's enough. I'm motivated now to do whatever it is that they're going to do. Is it the shoulds? Is it the haves tos? Is it the must? I must do this.
There's an old story about an insurance sales guy, and he calls on farmers out in the country, and he comes up to this farmer's house. And the farmer's out there sitting on the porch in his rocking chair, just like you would imagine, right? And the insurance guy starts, talking to the farmer and whatnot. And shortly into it, the guy's hound dog's like, oh, just lets out this blood-curdling, cry. And insurance guy stops, and a little bit later, the dog stops. And insurance guy starts talking again, and pretty soon the dog does the exact same thing. Arr! Just gives out this blood-curdling, cry. And this goes on the third time. After the third time, this insurance guy looks at the farmer and he goes, "What's wrong with your dog?" He goes, "He's laying on a nail." He goes, "Well, why doesn't he just move?" He says, "Because it doesn't hurt him bad enough yet." That's why people change. I think they have to get to a point, whether it's the shoulds, the coulds, the whatever, there has to be enough pain point for them to make the change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to get to a point where, you're just like, all right, enough's enough. You got to be fed up with it.
Yeah.
And you want it. You want it bad enough because you're tired of the pain. Right. So I think that's where really people really find the true motivation, right? Is it sustainable?
Which one?
I'd say either one of them. Obviously, if you're motivated out of anger and, you could even say like pride, right? Motivated out of pride, perfect example. How many like the Marines? You look at the Marines, and they when they go through their training, they do remarkable things, and they've pushed themselves further than they ever could believe that they could get there, right? And one of the things that I was listening to is like, well, what do they, what happens, when they leave the Marines? One, they left the environment. Right, they're no longer in the environment to keep pushing themselves to the next level, right? To stay motivated. And the other time, and then a lot of them, they kind of just fizzle out. And now that all of a sudden they're just they reminisce about what they did, but that was the peak of their life.
Hoorah! Once a Marine, always a Marine, right? Which is awesome, right? However, has its limitations too, that mindset.
Well, and if we look at the map of consciousness and all that, and we find out where pride really is, it doesn't vibrate all that high, because it can be knocked off its pedestal, right? Because it requires, it's pride is a result of outside circumstance.
And I think that's interesting too, because in that whole area of Marines, and I don't want to upset or piss off any of my Marine friends out there because I've got a lot of them. There's the pride factor, which is a pride factor is that they have, and then there's being proud that they were. I think there's a difference between the two, right? Having pride is different than being proud that you were.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, it's like, again, when we're talking about motivation, it's like, all right, well, again, it gets you started, right? And how do you sustain it?
Well, I wrote down a note when you started that, Mike, you about either positive or negative motivation, right? So brain chemistry, we were talking about anger, right? Or being pissed off. And what's that brain? If Jack were here, this would be great to have a conversation about the brain chemistry that goes on between the difference in being out of anger or being pissed off about something and motivated, and then the difference in chemistry between that and the creation side of it, the full creation of, just generating this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's at a cellular level, and that's, if Jack were here, he'd be talking about, all your little cells are just little mini yous, and whatever you're creating, right, energy-wise and feelings-wise is what, the cells get used to, and they will find ways to get what it wants, right? So once you got the motivation, what are people creating out of their motivation? I mean, a lot of people, they just get super enthusiastic. How about starting a new business, right? How many people do we know that have just been, they're motivated out of enthusiasm, hope, right? And just like, oh man, this is possible. Oh, this is possible, right? Now we've seen it. We see it a lot, especially in business, networking, where, businesses come in and they might, they're there for 6 months to a year. And then all of a sudden, the road got a little tough. The motivation wasn't there. They lost that enthusiasm. And what happened?
It faded away. They faded away.
Yeah, because it was relying on the enthusiasm. So it's a shift. Like, if we're just talking about business, look, we're all going to get excited, especially when it's new. But when you're in, excuse me, I got something in my throat here. It's kind of crazy. But when we're motivated, it starts out as that enthusiasm, right? Or it starts out, yeah, man, like, I'm pissed. I got to change something, right? At some point, it shifts. And I think that's where, and it can shift in two ways. Either you find a way to dig down deep and keep going and find new ways to motivate you to achieve what you want, or it fizzles out and it now just becomes a lost dream.
Fizzle out. So what was right there for me is that euphoric feeling, right? When you're motivated, you kind of have an euphoric feeling about it. And when that begins to fade, I think people think that euphoric feeling should be there all the time. And like anything in life, that's just not sustainable, right? Like the happy chemicals that our brain puts out, if those were rushing through our body all the time, there would be a price for that, right? Just like, the other chemicals that, on the flip side, the anger side, if those were rushing through our body all the time, there'd be a price to pay for that. So I think that people get caught up in that euphoric feeling of their motivation. And as soon as it starts to wane, they think it's not working anymore, and they stop doing the work of where they're at and keep going. I know the restaurant that I had, that we turned around and sold 6.5 years for 15 multiples of what we bought it for. I tell people all the time, the only reason we got there was, to be honest with you, stubborn stupidity that I wouldn't quit. I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And that's what people need beyond the motivation.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. I'm at the gym this morning, and I was talking to one of the gym guys that I see regularly and developed a relationship with him and all that, and asked him how his weekend was. And he's like, it was busy. It's just nonstop. I don't have the time. It's like, I'm working Monday through Friday. I'm busy, busy, busy. He's running his own business, right? And it's a demanding business. It's a physically demanding business where he's physically out in the field, and he knows, man, I got to get out of the field. I need to train some guys, all that stuff. But then he goes home, and he, now it's kid stuff, right? So now it's soccer games and basketball games and run here and go there and do this and do that. And then it's Sunday and it's church. And then, we got birthday parties and this and that. And I got to build this for, one of the kids. And he expressed to me like how all of a sudden, just like a moment of frustration. And it was like, I just don't have enough time and And I looked at him and I said, well, what is it that you want? Well, I really, and he expressed what he wanted to do and what he wanted to create with his business. And I was like, great, you can take the motivation you can take this scenario and get motivated with the frustration of where you're at to change it, right? And you can use that. You can also realize that, time is, it's all relative.
Yeah.
So, it's, how many people get stuck in that scenario? So it's like the hound dog laying on the nail. It's like, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to accomplish with your life? And I guess, what's going to motivate you to wake up and move and either create the business that you wanted or take your business to the next level that you wanted or improve the relationships in your life with your family or your friends? What's that point? And are you going to be able to, and where do you want to come from? What type of mindset do you want to come from? Yeah, I'm doing this out of spite and anger and frustration. Something's got to change. Or do you want to come at it from, hey, look, you know what? I get to do this. I get to show up here every Monday and do this podcast.
Yep.
You know how awesome that is? Created this out of absolutely nothing. And it motivates me to come in here and then talk about our members and highlight them and then bring them in and just give them the opportunity to expose themselves. That is an awesome, amazing feeling. And it motivates me every Monday. And I'm like, no, I don't want to miss this. The only way I'm going to miss this is if I'm sick or I'm out of town.
Right.
Right? But it's the I get to. I don't have to do this. I get to do this.
Well, and I think you hit on something, so we've actually heard, you and I both, in a couple of venues, I'm sure, where, somebody has said, well, what's your long-term plan for the podcast? Because if you don't really have a long-term plan, this is going to get mundane for you guys. And it's going to become harder to do and fall off. And, we come in here and we don't even know, we don't have a written out, 12-week agenda of what we're going to talk about each week. We just come in here and it's just a conversation, right?
Absolutely.
So having said what you said, you get to come in here. We get to come in here and do this. I look forward to it, and I can't see at any period of time right now where this is going to be like, oh, God, I got to go do the podcast, right? Because of the exact reasons that you said. We get to just hang out, have fun, talk about stuff, and bring members on and help them, share their story with us and share their story with the world. Like, that's freaking fun, and it's awesome.
Absolutely. And it should be, right? I mean, why else would, so, we're talking about motivation. Right there. It starts with the mindset, right? Where do you want to come from? Now, the mindset of the world out there it's bleak and dark, and especially if you're listening to the, mainstream media and all this
CNN,
stuff.
you know what that stands for, right? Constant negative news.
There you go. I'm sure there's an acronym for Fox, and I'm sure there's an acronym for all of the others, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, like, if you want to do something in your life, you gotta do it. If you want to change something in your life, guess what? You got to change something in your life. How many times? How many people? You're like, oh, well, that's. What did you just say, Micah? And Brian's here looking at me and is like, well, Brian, if you want to change something in your life, you have to change something in your life. And all of a sudden, like, people, you hear it, and then they're like, oh yeah, I guess there is some truth to that.
It's a little bit of calling them on their crap without actually calling them on their crap, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I use it all the time, especially doing a lot of the stuff that, I've had to do before in the past in business. It's sometimes you just got to call people out. You're like, hey, look, we can either change it or, we're going to end up with the same results. And if we want the same results and we're happy with the same results, then I guess there's no need to change it.
Well, and I think, the motivation piece, and it's society in many ways, in many aspects of society, people get lost in the motivation because everything is so sensationalized in our society and so instant gratification, right? And I remember one of our keynote speakers at a conference that I went to years ago was, and I can't remember his last name, but I know Brian will know it, from Will Smith played him in The Pursuit of Happiness, Chris, whatever his name was, who was a single dad, broke, amazing story. If you haven't had a chance to watch or you haven't watched it in a while, watch The Pursuit of Happiness. It's a great movie. But Chris was on stage and he was our keynote speaker for about 45 minutes to an hour. One of the biggest takeaways that I took from him, actually the only one that I really remember, is baby steps count too. Right? Baby steps count. And that motivation, that business, changing whatever it is you want to change in your life, just keep taking the baby steps. You'll get there, right? I did it physically.
You just posted it like the other day on one of your posts. It was like there were two ladders, and there was the baby step ladder where you're just hitting lots of little rungs, and then there was this other ladder where it was like the rungs were separated, vastly separation, huge separation. And I think a lot of people think that, oh no, you got to make these big leaps. No, it's the consistency and the motivation that you need to muster up within yourself to stay motivated to make it to the next step.
Yep.
But if you're doing little baby steps, if you're climbing it's the 1%, right? Just if you're motivated enough to do 1% better than you were yesterday, then guess what? All you have to do is wake up the next morning and be motivated to do 1% better than you did yesterday. How much is that asking of yourself?
Not even noticeable.
Absolutely. So, that right there, if people could grasp that concept, get motivated at the beginning of your day to become 1% better than you were yesterday. If most people could grasp that, reach their arms around it, hug it, embrace it, that might serve them.
So you said grasp that early in the morning, right? So one of the practices that I've done for over 20 years now is gratitude journaling. First thing in the morning, right? So I get up and, I got my coffee. I do some meditation, breathing exercises, get the mind and the body, in harmony. And, we're doing the hemi-sync right now, you, me, and Jack on the brain. But one of the things that has been extremely powerful is that gratitude journal. And just 5 minutes every day, just what am I grateful for, right? Setting that mindset of, and a lot of what I write down is the same stuff, right? And, I'll add in a few different things here and there, but I start it with just gratitude. And it's amazing how easy the day flows. Not that the day is easy always, but the flow is easy in that I'm not in resistance because I'm in gratitude. And I think that goes hand in hand with motivation. It's kind of hard to have motivation if you don't have gratitude.
Absolutely. Gratitude's everything. And a lot of people, how many people are out there, they're going, oh man, I don't know what to be grateful for. And I guarantee I can meet a complete stranger off the street and give them a list of 50 things that you should be grateful for right there, and I don't even know them. Right? The air you breathe, the ground you walk on, the fact that you have legs, the fact that you have arms, the fact that you're able to speak, the fact that you're able to listen to the birds chirping and the wind and the leaves. The fact that you were able to see the sun rise and see the sun set, to see the moon still up in the sky, to see stars at night, to see, all of those things. And the list goes on, and yet these are the things that we take for granted. And so if we're taking that for granted, how are we able to get motivated, right? So now if all of a sudden we start to implement the gratitude for the things that we're grateful for in our lives now, and then we have the mindset of like, oh man, I get to go do this. I get to go do that. I get to go do some amazing things in my day. And I'm motivated to just make myself 1% better than I was yesterday. Man, that's powerful.
Yeah. So Micah, when was a time in your life that, two scenarios where you used positive motivation and it created something really great, and you used negative motivation and it created whatever it created, right? It could have been a great thing. It could have been a bad thing, like probably back in your restaurant days, possibly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the negative motivation was, when I was in fine dining, that's a cutthroat business. It's so demanding, it's challenging, and the competition level, especially in fine dining, it's like you've always got to be coming up with the new thing. And so you find motivations out of it's more scarcity or, just competition mindset where you're getting motivated like, oh, if I don't, come up with something really cool and unique, I could lose my job, right? Because, in fine dining, it's so meticulous. And so, living in that world, I very much had to get motivated to muster up whatever creativity I could to create something outstanding, an amazing, combination of flavors and this and that. And you know what? It's it's just brought back a flood of memories of just, disappointments. So, it's tough. So like from the negative standpoint, you can do it. I don't know that it's sustainable. I lived in that for a long period of time, and eventually I left the fine dining industry because of the demand for constant, creativity.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't think it was CANIC either. Constant, never-ending improvement, right? Or it
CANI, yeah.
CANI. It was it was literally perfection.
Yeah.
Right? And one is exhausting and the other one is not exhausting because you're just improving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the positive side, I'll mention this before we bring Brian in. It's like when we moved down here to Arizona, and I left the restaurant industry altogether, and I got into insurance, right? One thing was said to me, and I took it to heart. You got to work harder on yourself than you do your business. And I was enthusiastic, and I was motivated to go and create something new in my life and change what I wanted to change. And I look at that, it came from a different mindset. It came from a mindset of gratitude. It came from a mindset, positive mindset, where now it's like, oh my goodness, look at the people that I get to affect on a daily basis.
And what does it feel like in your body when you were brought back that flood of thoughts, right?
Oh, it's heavy, and it's like a weight. It's like I would feel like I'm throwing on a fat bodysuit, where it's like you're lugging 500 pounds around. You're like, oh, you're just okay, because a lot of that was just muscling through.
Yeah,
it was just muscling through, just grinding through, muscling it out. I used to use I'm just going to hoss this out. I got to hoss this out real quick. And that was daily. Yeah. That was I just got to muscle through this. And then you go home and all right, I just got to grind it again. And it's the grind. And you'll hear people in that industry, they talk to it and they refer to it about it's being the grind.
So before the grind, you hear that out in the world a lot. You see it on social media, right? People posting about, out grinding and, that's how you win. And look, I get that concept. I get the idea. However, I think it's exhausting. Well, even thinking of that, right? From a creation standpoint, I would rather create something than to grind to win. Well,
when we're using, think about the word that we're using, and we'll bring Brian in and we'll see how he feels about the word grinds. When what happens when we're grinding things?
We're wearing it down.
Yeah, and we're transforming it. I look at it as, I'm from the restaurant, so we're grinding beans, we're grinding beef. Right now, all of a sudden, we're taking one physical matter, and we're transforming it into a smaller, dissected portion of. So, where is the growth? Where is the growth in grinding? We're diminishing ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So when I got out of the restaurant industry, people get motivated with grinding all the time, right? But it's a different mindset. It's a different type of motivation. I get to go and impact and inspire and create, right, with love and compassion and empathy and really leave my mark in this world.
And it feels like play.
It does.
Yeah.
So let's see what Brian has to say about all this and bring him in. Brian, welcome. Hold on. We got to give you a warm welcome here. So how do you feel about grinding?
It's interesting. So having done quite a bit of personal development work, you talk about motivation. We were discussing a little bit before you guys started talking about, one of the things I've been attempting to do is really start the day positive, a little gratitude, watch a motivational video on YouTube. And it's become apparent to me last week that it's very difficult to find motivational videos that are not just about hard work, get up earlier, grind, pain. And for me, that's not fun. So, for me, it's like, okay, how can we make this more fun? How can we bring play and ease to life? And I think that's part of the motivation that as you go through things, you learn over time.
Absolutely.
And a thing too about Grindon being a ex-collegiate superstar basketball player, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you guys talked to me a few different things, the whys and what do you want. And I think sometimes you don't know what you want. I mean, when I was younger, Phil mentions basketball. I played at a school in California, and I was the school's first academic All-American in school history. However, when I went in for my senior year, I didn't even know that was on the radar until someone pointed it out that this was a very big possibility. And it wasn't so much the grind, but there was a lot of fun in getting to that level, right? And so I think that's one of the things that as you develop, when you get older, you are able to look back and say, was it difficult? Did you put in a lot of work, quote unquote work? Yes. However, it was a heck of a lot of fun. So, and I think there's another piece too, when you mention the motivation of people's why. I think a lot of us go through life very numb. You were kind of talking about that in your restaurant business, right? It's the same thing over and over. You just become static. And at some point you get to a why of I just want different and more. And that becomes the motivating factor for me on a daily basis. And that's not always a financial thing. It's a better relationships. It's more fun in relationships. It's, time with family and your dog or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I think the motivation when you've done some personal development really starts to come through in different avenues than your Tony Robbins or the other things you see.
Absolutely. So Brian, for our guests out there listening, for the listeners, Brian, you are a financial advisor, right?
Correct.
How long have you been in that space?
This will be 22 years, 23 years.
Fantastic. What motivates you when you're talking to clients about, all right, hey, I want. You're helping to set them up for financial success and their financial future. So what's the motivation for you and working with your clients? What is that like?
It's interesting to look back again. So let's do a look back. So I've known I wanted to get in this career since I was in like 7th grade. So it's kind of weird that happens. And then
nobody does that.
Yeah. So, and then I, grew from 5'10" to 6'5", and from 6'5" to 6'8". And so basketball came in, and then took a hiatus from coming out of college to go into this career and worked in professional sports for some teams and sales and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of hours. And so you asked about your motivation to come into a career where you can earn some pretty decent money. And in 7th grade, that was kind of the thing, earn some money and have fun in life. And I kind of looked and said, well, if I'm going to do 100-hour weeks, I'm going to do it for myself. And so that was my motivation going forward. Now, when I'm doing this, to help the clients, there's planning that's involved. It's pointing out and showing them, people think they know a lot about financial because you can go on YouTube and you can go on anything else, but they don't create a plan. So they know sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And that's a lot what we end up pointing out or what I point out to people and attempt to help them go down the different paths to get them to where they think they want to be. And I always joke with people along the way, as you do this over time, it's not always about the percentages that you're getting in your financial results. Sometimes I say, I wish instead of getting a business management degree, I'd gotten a psychology degree, because there's a lot of times you're helping people through issues that are not financially related. However, they're deriving from that financial piece. And so I think the other thing with financial planning is most people think it's boring and it's hard and it's a lot of work. And so one of the things that I really attempt to bring to this is making it more fun. It doesn't have to be painful to do all of this.
So talk about fun, Brian. So how long have you and I known each other? Since almost that full 23 years.
18, 20 years at least.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something, but then I'm gonna come back to my question. So Brian got started back in just around the time of the .com bust.
Right after 9/11.
Yeah, and was with a company where you had to go door knocking. So you talk about grinding it out, right? And that's one of the things that I love and respect about Brian is, that was a tool, that has served him very well. So you talk about fun, Brian. A little over a year ago, you and I sat down and had coffee at the Sagebrush Coffee Shop. Mm-hmm. Share what your vision for your office was that you shared with me that day. You remember?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's weird. So we go to conferences and people say, tell me about a financial advisor. And first thing that comes to most people's mind is old white-haired guy, Bernie Madoff, right? And that's it. That's what I get mistaken for.
Not Bernie.
Yeah. So I said to Phil and I were talking a little bit, and I said, I'm still not sure how I'm going to do this, where I'm going to pull this off, or anything else. And it's not trade secret or anything, because I know some people have done this already. However, I started thinking about, well, you know what? I just want people to, if they're going to come into my office, to not have a miserable experience, whether the market's up, down, left, right, indifferent, whatever's going on with your family, everything else. But I had this idea of, what if they got to come in and play golf? Like, have a golf simulator. Play 3 holes at Pebble Beach. That can't be too bad before you sit down and talk with your planner. And then in the back room, have a big enough room to host events, especially around sports, because I enjoy my sports, and have, cookouts on weekends and stuff like that, and have a coffee bar, and make it an experience. I'm a massive Disney fan. Hate the crowds. However, I love the feeling that when I go to Disney World or Land, I become a little kid again, and it's just enjoyable. I want people to have that same enjoyment around their finances, around their family. And the thing that I think finances bring to people's lives is truly giving them the ability to not worry and enjoy the time doing the things that they love to do. So I'm sure with the insurance side, you see that quite a bit. It's you're the business. There's a lot of ways that you can take that pressure off of people. And again, sometimes they don't know how to do it. I had a client retire this last year, and when we started, we've been working together for a while. However, when we started working together, they said, we're not going to retire until there's age difference, 65 and 70. And they retired at 66 and 62. And the guy wasn't going to retire until 63. And so I got this surprise phone call saying, hey, I'm done in 30 days. I'm going, well, this isn't what we planned. And I went back and looked at the plan and said, well, yeah, you're 90% taken care of in your expenses and everything for the rest of your life. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to attempt to go to Italy and travel when we're 80 and 90 years old on scooters. We want to do this now. And that's what I've been telling them for a long time is, I have so many people I know in life that are family and friends through different organizations that are older that we're always going to. I was going to go to Italy when this, and then this happened and this. And so I tell a lot of my clients, which is probably different from the rest of the world, is, you can expect to spend probably a third of your money that you save in the first 5 to 7 years of retirement. Go do the things you enjoy versus saving until you're 92 to try and do it.
Well, yeah. Now you're not, one, you don't have the energy, and two, your body is breaking down.
Right.
Are you going to be able to ride those scooters? That's really powerful. And again, it ties into the motivation, right? Yeah. So what's that feeling like what was that feeling for you when you heard them say that? Like, hey, the line, you literally just said it. We want to ride scooters in Italy now. What was the first feeling that you felt?
Oh, there are a couple. One, there was surprise because there was, we had planned another year. So the planner in me was like, well, hey, hold on. This is, you got to wait till you're 63. And then, I went back, ran the numbers, and I was like, God, this is so cool. Matter of fact, they just sent me pictures. They were at Zion Park this last week and, sending me pictures of stuff. And I'm like, that's pretty dang cool. And the other piece is, too, is, there's always a a cost in waiting. And I had a client that was wanting to do an investment in the last couple of weeks that was going to cost about $25,000 a year. And as we talked through it, and they're younger, they have children that are graduating college, going to be getting married, stuff like that. And I said to him, do you really want this? Or would you rather take that money and go enjoy life and have family trips that when you're now 60 and 70 and 80, that your girls can look back and say, man, do you remember that year we went to Disney? Do you remember that year we got the beach house? Do you remember that year? And he's like, well, I like that a lot better. So go enjoy some of the things that you do. They do pretty well, as far as their income. And so it's fun to walk away from that and go, well, did I miss a commission? Sure. Does that person going to have a much better quality of life, in my opinion, having fun with your family and friends? 100%. And I think when you come from a spot, no matter what business you're in, of wanting what's best for other people, that you don't have to necessarily dig every day to find motivation. I know that's where you guys started with this, so bringing it back to that, like, it's just not there. Your motivation is like, okay, like you said, I get up and help people every day.
Yeah.
Is it horrible when the markets go bad? No. It used to be. Now, because people have plans and we've talked through their goals and objectives and, what they truly want to do in life. No one just says, I want to save money. I mean,
that's boring.
Yeah. People are like, I want to go to a cruise every year. I want to visit every Disney park. I want to go, whatever it is for each person. And then we show how they can do that. Well, it's pretty fun. And we all know life is going to life, and it's at some point in time, it's going to end for everybody. No one gets out of this thing. So I just seem to think right now, enjoy what you can and have fun, and, not always tied to all of the results that people think they should be tied to. I think doing this work with ENO, Jack, all you guys, the masterminds and everything that we go through is, I think when you're willing to take a step back and look at yourself, that it creates a much bigger life for yourself and for the people around you. And look, there's still people I know and friends that say they're motivated. However, they don't want to change. When we met a year ago, I was close to 350 pounds, just so you guys know. I'm almost down to 300 now.
Yeah.
It's been a journey, but I've found fun in being able to do the workouts that I do and spend time with the people I spend time with.
And it hasn't come without its challenges in that process either, right?
No. And that's okay, because that's, to me, sometimes the challenges are fun too, right? You turn it into a game, and you're prepared for that game. You just go out and have fun in the game.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
So, Brian, you've been in the business long enough to see. I want to get from your perspective, what have you seen in a change of mentality in people as to what retirement means to them from 20 years ago to today? And I ask that because I think of my grandparents and my parents and how they retired. And, I'm at the age now that my dad retired, right? And retirement to me looks a lot different than it did for them. So what have you seen in the last 20 years mentality-wise?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen major corporations go away from full-on guaranteed pensions for people.
Those bastards.
Well, there's costs and everything like that. And then, so now you have to take on some personal responsibility. However, I don't think everyone wants to take that responsibility. And, I was talking to my wife the other day about this a little bit, and the fact that, we all have our own businesses. typically the people, I think that most people working in ENO in some way, shape, or form have their own businesses. And I don't know how many times you all have been told you're so lucky, right? You get to do all this stuff, and you get to come have a podcast, and you get to go to masterminds and lunches, and instead of sitting in an office from 9 to 5. And I always point out, like, yeah, we're so lucky. We all have to figure out our own 401ks and retirement. We all have to figure out our own health care. That $35 a month that you pay is not what we pay for our same health care. So I think retirement has gotten different. My dad is 86 and has a pension, has, the health care. It's just not there. So now we're having to figure out creative ways to help people realize that that's not going to be there in retirement for them as a guarantee, and they're going to have to create some of that themselves. Does that come from a place of scarcity that you have to do X, Y, and Z? No, I think that comes from a place of, making some choices. It's been interesting over to the, talking about the motivation is I've never been a reader. I've started reading again. I really enjoy it. And, instead of watching the next cruddy movie on Netflix or whatever, it's people sometimes have to have those real discussions about, yes, it's good to want things. However, you also have to be realistic in your current situation. Have the dream, keep playing to get to that dream, and then just go from there. But yeah, retirement it's interesting because there's going to be a massive wealth transfer in this country at some point in time from the baby boomer generation. And I think that's going to be an interesting time to see what people in their 50s and 40s end up doing when they inherit money.
And what's the mindset been? So my grandparents, especially my dad, full professor of psychology at ASU, full colonel in the Air Force. When he retired and kind of sat down on the couch. Mm-hmm. They had a motorhome. They did some things while they still could. For me, I don't see retirement as retirement. This is what I get to do. I can do this into my 70s. I can do this into my 80s if I wanted to. Now, does that mean that I want to bust my butt, 50, 60, 70 hours a week? No. So what's the mind shift been for people as far as what retirement actually feels like?
I think part of it is who you hang around, right? So that's some of it is, a lot of the people I talk to plan on still having businesses or doing something even in their retirement. And that just may look like we're spending a year in Italy, or something. However, we're still having an income or creating a second income or whatever. I think you're right. My dad and mom, they don't travel as much. I see a lot of people now in retirement, they want to travel. They want to experience the world. I don't see a lot of people that really, at least the people I'm working with, are not people that want to just sit on their couch and do nothing.
Well, the number one killer of retirees, right, is retirement.
Yeah. Because
they sit on the couch and they don't do anything, and a body in motion stays in motion. A body just sitting on the couch is going to decay.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes they don't know what they want to do either.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's part of what we've been helping also is, part of this is not just, again, going back to psychology degree. I had a client 2 years ago retire after a 30-plus year career at a big company here in the Valley, did very well for himself, retired on Friday, called me on Monday and said, I think I'm calling to get my old job back. And I said, are you crazy? You were driving an hour and 15 minutes from the West Valley to the East Valley every day. You hated being there. You were tired of the meetings and so on and so forth. And I'm like, just relax. I mean, kind of, and that's the other thing I will say is, so having a financial plan to save money is part of it. But then also we talk to people about, well, what is your plan in retirement?
That's never talked about.
Who wants? People, they don't want to just go, okay, I want to. It used to be the little green line from one company and the orange talking what are they, squirrels or whatever that had the thing. And, you know, now I don't think it's so much about the actual dollar amount that you save, but it's about what those dollars are going to be able to provide for you that you want to do in retirement or any point in your life. I've had clients come back and say, I want to pay for child's education. There's ways to do that. I've had, you know, and then it's, you know, talking with people to get more tax efficient and things of that nature. So, I mean, that's all the boring minutia that we get to figure out with accountants and things of that nature to you know, talk to people about really what is the goals, objectives, dreams. Because so many people, and again, going back to a year ago, the one thing I will say, and Micah, you hit on this earlier, is I truly believe a lot of society just goes through this life very numb.
Numb and dumb.
I wouldn't even say dumb, just numb.
Well, but when you're numb, you kind of feel dumb, right? And I don't mean like stupid dumb.
Right.
Just
it's just, you know,
uneducated.
Well, and you said if you want change, you have to change. It was very easy to be 350 pounds, sit on the couch, and you know, eat chicken wings and whatever else.
Oh, it's easy to pack on the pounds.
Yeah,
it's easy. You don't have to work very hard at that.
No. And sometimes it's fun. However, you know, then you go.
It's very fun.
Then you go. Okay, well now we're gonna travel and let's go to Disney World, which I like to do. And you're like, look down at your watch at the end of the day, and you're going, does that really say 26,000 steps?
No wonder my body feels.
No wonder I hurt. And I'm taking salt baths and everything else when you're in the hotel, and it's like this is miserable, you know. And then you got to get up and do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and so I don't know, just coming from a place of ease, play, fun, you know, wanting more and better, I think is something that I wish we could give to more people. My wife assisted at Breakthrough a couple weeks ago, and she came home and was telling me about a 12-year-old that went through there. And I remember when we did Breakthrough, we had a 17-year-old go through there. And I remember walking out of that just going, can you imagine what life would be like knowing what you know at 12 and 17, just the possibilities and the creation out there versus whatever story and everything else you had before you. So I think even part of the financial world that I deal in is creating opportunities and stories for people to see a bigger, brighter future for themselves or opportunities for them to enjoy life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's hard to be miserable.
Yeah.
And it's hard to suffer.
And that's something you gave up.
Oh, yeah.
And it shows big time. You know, one of the things you said, Brian, is, you know, when I ask about, you know, what's the shift been in mentality wise on retirement is, you know, who you hang with, you know. So I'm at that age where, you know, my dad was retiring at this point in time after a very long, you know, career in not only the military, but also in, you know, at the schools at ASU and college. And, you know, I actually hang around pretty much with people that are anywhere from 5 years on the small side to 20 years younger than I am. Mm-hmm. And I know people that are in my age-ish group that are, you know, they're moving into, you know, 55 plus communities. And I'm like, I'm fighting that. Like, I am not going that direction because it just, there's a mindset around that, you know, that people have. And for me, that's not where I want to be. You know, I don't want to be in that mind. And look, nothing wrong with that. But, you know, I've just seen people like and that's what happened to my dad. When he retired, he just slowed down and nothing was a possibility anymore. So I love that I'm still out there doing what I do, and I get to hang with people that are 10, 15, 20 years younger than me. That inspires the shit out of me, keeps me young. And I think on the flip side, you know, for those people that are 10 or 15 or 20 years younger, you know, when they can hang out with the right kind of people that are their seniors, there's a lot of value and excitement that they get out of that as well.
Absolutely. Let me throw this out there, Brian, because everyone just seems to be hung up on this one number. You know what number I'm talking about? It's just like fixated on it. 65. I mean, would you agree that that's just an arbitrary number?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So like, okay, great. We got, who came up with that number? The government did, right? It's an arbitrary number that they made up. Where did that number come from, 65?
Well, it had to do with life expectancy and Social Security a long time ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, great. If you live past 65, we'll take care of you. Well, and people weren't living past 65. That was the life expectancy. So if you lived to 67, kudos to you, right? Yeah. And then now, like Phil, you're at that age now. Again, you know people your age that are not active like you. You're out there cycling. You're healthy. You're doing things that most people your age are not doing. They're getting ready to sit on the couch.
I got a cycling buddy. It goes to what you were just sharing a bit ago about the couch. His cycling jersey says, "Hills hurt, couches kill."
There you go. That's the truth. There's some truth right there, right? So it's an arbitrary number, and here's the thing: what's the life expectancy now, Brian?
It's 84, 86, I believe.
I think it's like 87, 88, 86 to 87. I think 86 for men, 87, 88 for women now.
I'm biased on this whole thing, and I always tell clients that or prospects even, because my grandfather lived to 87, then the next was 92, then my grandmother was 94, and the one that passed was 101 and a half, and she was still the president of her nursing home when she passed. So, again, my time frame is completely skewed.
So my point to all of this is, what are you going to do? Sit on the couch for 30 years after you retire at 65? You're going to want to do something.
But Micah, there are people that do that now. They go to the same restaurant every week. They go to the same bar every week. They do the same thing every week and then wonder why nothing changes. And then again, we're all so lucky, right? Because
lack of motivation.
Yeah. And it goes back to the motivation. And is it truly motivation, or is it just the sickness, or whatever you want to call that, has just gotten to that point, and that's where they're at right now? Well, and again, you mentioned one other thing about retirement, and I think that's probably key, is relationship. And I know you guys talked about this a few weeks ago, because we had come off the challenge, which is now the game. And the depth of those relationships in that group are the of us that went through it are still just blooming, and we're doing things together, and the trust factor that you have to call and ask people about things, or even in our masterminds. I mean, the people that I talk to on a weekly basis, and even outside of those masterminds, is just, it gets your sphere to be so much bigger than just the mundane in life. And I think the other piece of it is, when you become an entrepreneur, or you have your own business, or you're in sales of some sort of, making life bigger and better, the people you're around, the relationships you develop, are going to be what moves you forward.
Yeah.
Because I could be having a bad day, and you have 30, 40 people that will uplift you in some way, shape, or form. May not be quite motivation, but there's someone there to give you empathy, to help you move along.
Yeah. And not just a ear to have it land on, but actually right there. So, you mentioned something that, the people that you went through in the breakthrough and then onto the game, mm-hmm. and, the depth of what's continuing to grow there. And now in your mastermind group with ENO, your Mesa Mega Minds, you've got 5 people that are getting ready to go through that. They just did their breakthrough, and they're like, what's that going to be like in that group for you? Now you're going to have 2 groups of people, but not like 2 groups, right? Mm-hmm. There's different timing for these people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to talk with people. I like to share things, and it has been, no kidding, it has been difficult to not let any of the cats out of the bag, as I've been sitting there for, I don't know how long has Mason Mastermind's been going for, the last few months, and we complete breakthrough and complete the game, and I'm just like, okay, y'all are going to have fun, and you sit there and you it's like, I just see, that group that went through Breakthrough, and I know there were people from other groups also in there, but seeing the light in their face, and last week, Tuesday, going in there and just being like, this is the relationship in the room changed.
Yeah.
A lot. And not that it was bad before. It's just, there was a much lighter, open space. And I think that's, again, back to the motivation. If you're in this type of work industry, and this isn't even the financial stuff, I think you just get to a point where you're different, right? Because in Arizona, there's a plethora of financial advisors, especially if you come into Scottsdale, that you can hit one on almost every corner. And all of us have different thoughts and perspectives. We may use the same investment tools and whatever else. However, what I tell someone is going to be completely different than what another person likes. And this is why I say relationships are the key to this.
Yeah. Because
that mastermind, I cannot wait to see these people go through the game, especially knowing what happened with me through the whole thing.
You might even be there.
Yeah. Micah can tell some good stories about the game for me. So, but it was a challenge. It was fun, and I wouldn't trade that time for anything right now. Yeah. None of my friends, one of my friends understands it, but the majority of them don't. And when I told him one of the things that I did and what I got out of it, and it was just kind of like, oh, I know. And I'm like, okay, this is my best friend for decades. And it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I've always known that about you. I'm going, okay, we've been knowing each other since we were old enough to play. Like, you've never said anything in 50 years, so it was just kind of one of those things. But it was, like I said, it's the relationships. Yeah. And I think that's the key, is when you can develop a great relationship with somebody in one way or the other, and then help them see ideas and opportunities that they may not even know that they're looking for themselves, is so much fun. Yeah. Again, the guy that decided, I don't want to buy a $25,000 product. I'd rather have time with my family. Yeah. I mean, and look, I'm lucky. My mom and dad are still alive, knock on wood, and, love doing stuff. My dad and I are active in the Shriners organization. We've gotten to travel together for the last 20 years. And has it become harder as he's 86 years old, getting through airports and everything? Well, sure. And even me moving around, yes. However, I would not change anything that I've done with him in that time. My mom too, same thing. It's just, you look back and go, there's a point where people are gone, and man, I've been lucky to do what I've been doing.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, this whole conversation, if I kind of wrap up today on motivation, comes down to making an impact, right? Mm-hmm. And when you make a positive impact and you come from impact, the motivation's almost always there.
It's right there.
It's right there.
It's right there.
Yeah. Well, that's it, guys. Brian, thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Yeah. Holy smokes. I am super looking forward to hearing, getting this one out there. I mean, this has been a great conversation today.
So, Brian, tell our listeners how to reach you. Brian Tollefson, and how do you want them to reach you?
So my website is Centered Wealth Strategies, is my company name. So it's centeredws.com. You can look up on the ENO site, or I can give my phone number.
Yep, go ahead.
480-339-1799. You'll end up probably talking to my assistant, Trish, or my wife, Laura, that's also the office manager. So we can schedule time to talk and go from there. So
awesome. Well, I think that's a wrap, Micah.
Awesome. Sounds good. Everyone, peace out.